Hello, it's Nicko with Food Cravings, and today we're making falafel or falafel as I pronounce it, and I'm gonna show you my take on this classic dish. You don't need to make this with dry chickpeas that are soaked in water overnight or whatnot. You can make this one of two ways. Most people that I know make this the way that I'm gonna teach you how to make it is with canned fava and garbanzo. Let's get started. In a colander I have 1 can each of fava beans and garbanzo beans drained and rinsed. We'll also need 4 to 5 garlic cloves. For the next step, we'll go ahead and dump in the beans into the basin of the food processor. Once that's done, we'll go ahead and dump in the diced onions and a bit of parsley, making sure to get each and every last bit into the basin. After that, we're gonna go ahead and add the spices, starting with the cumin. Next, we're gonna add some coriander. Then we'll add some salt. And then we'll add some pepper. Next, we'll also add some cracked wheat or bulgur. And what this will do is to help soak up any leftover moisture from the garbanzo and fava. Next, we throw down some Aleppo pepper, or as it's properly pronounced, haleb. Next, we'll throw down some flour, and since I've also made falafel or falafel 1,000,001 times, I know what I'm doing, so this method truly works. You'll understand why. And finally, we'll add some baking soda or baking powder, or in this case, I added both. Next, we'll give it a whirl until it's coarsely ground. Then pop the top off and check for consistency. Here I decided to go ahead and work with this, although you could ground it a little finer, but I left it like this, and I'll tell you why in a minute. In a separate pot on high heat, we'll heat some oil, and you want to make sure you're using an oil with a higher smoking point so that the falafel balls or the falafel balls will brown. And using the handle of a wooden spoon, I checked to see if the oil was hot and ready. Shortly thereafter, I formed the falafel into balls and dropped them into the fryer. Then I gently stirred them around so that they won't stick, all the while giving the end of the spoon a little tappy tap while keeping a close eye on the frying action. And it was at this time that I started shaping more balls using a falafel scooper, of course. While pulling the knob on the falafel maker back, I patted in some mixture using a teaspoon. Then I popped it out. The balls stayed intact, at which point in time I dropped it into the fryer. So I'll show you here one more time. While pressing down on the side of the knob to the falafel maker, you fill the chamber with a few scoops of the mixture and pat it down. Then you release it and drop it into the fryer. During this process, you want to make sure that you firmly pat down the mixture into the chamber itself before popping it out, or else it'll crumble. Next, we'll go ahead and add a few of the falafel balls to the fryer, being careful to space it all out. And we'll want to fry these until golden brown for a few moments, then set aside. And I've drained these on a paper towel before starting to fry up another batch. And I always keep the batch to about 3 to 4 balls fried at the same time. It's important to remember not to crowd the oil pan, or pot in this case, with too many balls because the temperature drops. And when that happens, your fritters come out soggy, and we don't want that. Shortly after frying these, I removed them from the pot and let them rest to cool a bit. Of course, you'll want to do the same here. Next, after that's done, you'll want to prepare your tahini sauce. Luckily, I have some here already made from the previous video recipe. Next, you'll want to dice some tomatoes and pluck some parsley, which I have here. Then shred some lettuce and set aside. Next, we'll bust out the pickled turnips and set those aside. And now, to assemble our sandwich, you'll start by taking some of the falafel fritter balls, placing them into the Arabic bread, then drizzling some tahini on it. Next, we'll add the diced tomato and then the parsley, shredded lettuce, and pickles. And here I wanted to customize this sandwich just like they do at the other falafel joints, or falafel joints I should say. So I smeared on a dab of hummus. I should have called this the ultimate falafel sandwich. Next, I set it on my cutting board and gave it a roll. Once the rolling was done, it was time to go in for a taste, as usual, and I realized the earthiness of the falafel, along with the spices and the combination of the twang, couldn't be beat. This was so good, and the softness of the Arabic bread also came into play. And that's Chef Nicko style. The falafel balls were crunchy on the outside and soft on the inside. And the second way to eat this is just plain on its own by dipping it in the teratur or tahini mix that you just made. Wow, that tasted so good. Now that you've learned how to make falafel, you can dazzle your loved ones with this easy recipe. I hope you've enjoyed this recipe for falafel. For more info and ingredient amounts, please visit www.chefnickostyle.blogspot.com. Thank you and bon appetit.